In the UK, millions of self-employed people whose trade has been hit by COVID-19 can now apply for a second support grant from the government. More than 3 million people may be eligible for the payment of up to £6,570 each, which Chancellor Rishi Sunak said would be the final handout. The first grant, launched in May, saw £7.8 billion claimed by 2.7 million people. Paul Fleming is the General Secretary-elect of Equity, the Actors Union, and joins me now. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. So how helpful is this payment going to be?
I mean, for those who receive it, it will be phenomenally helpful. But as with the first round, so many of our members, whether they be performers, stage management directors, designers, variety artists, clowns, circus performers, they're just not going to receive it. And those who do, they receive very often very small amounts. And people who don't have complete tax records over a 3-year period, those amounts will be very, very small, and that particularly includes parents, carers, people who perhaps have part-time PAYE jobs, which mean that their income has fallen below the threshold in terms of self-employed earnings. And the biggest worry, of course, is that even for those who are able to claim it, this is the last payment. Now, our industry is not going to be going back to any sort of level of normality until next year. The government is not even going to declare when indoor performances return to normal until November, and that's when the announcement's coming, not when it's going to start. So actually, we're heading towards a bit of a cliff with a very, very inadequate parachute.
How many people in the performing industry who you represent have actually found themselves with absolutely no support? What sort of percentage would you say?
I mean, it's hard to say, but to put it into context, the vast majority of our members earn less than £10,000 a year on average from the profession, and that would put them very often below the threshold to get a meaningful amount from the scheme. And I mean, we in particular, if you think about underrepresented groups in our industry, parents and carers, people who come from outside the UK, perhaps don't have 3 years' worth of tax records, they are all disproportionately likely to be receiving a small amount or none at all. And indeed, nobody getting anything, as I say, beyond the second payment.
How are they coping, not just financially, but mentally as well, with what they're having to deal with?
I mean, I think we can all imagine that level of trauma for a profession, no matter whether you be, again, performer, stage manager, director, variety artist. You've spent your whole life putting together your skills, demonstrating your talent, and now there's a prospect that you can't survive in that industry, in our industry, until it reopens, and that is incredibly traumatic. People aren't able to pay their bills and they're considering transitioning out. And really, when we talk about the government's inadequacy of support here, we're talking about everybody who's watching at home. When you see your child in a nativity play, do you believe they have the right to become a professional performer? Or do you believe that that right is caveated by your ability to pay for them, to support them? And while the government's sending a very clear message that what they think is that only a certain sort of person who's independently wealthy has the right to go from a nativity play to professional training and to go off and make a living in the profession. And that is incredibly traumatic.
What do you think the legacy of COVID-19 will be on the industry, not just for those who are in it at the moment, but for others who are looking at it, seeing very clearly how vulnerable those in it are?
I mean, I think everybody knows that entering the performing arts, entering entertainment is a precarious industry, and COVID-19 doesn't change any of that. And on our behalf, for Equity, we're going to keep fighting to make sure that actually we emerge into a new normal that looks more stable for people. That is the option that the government has in front of them, actually, to really change how this key sector of the economy treats its workforce to ensure that it's genuinely accessible to everybody. It can continue to be an economic success story. So, I am hopeful, as long as we are listened to, that we can end up in a world that's much, much better than when lockdown started. We have a very precarious economy of arts and entertainment in this country, and we can change that. If the government doesn't act, and doesn't act around the 4 pillars that the union set out, that's a safe opening subsidy, workforce support, really seriously looking about equalities and protecting infrastructure and buildings. Viewers can look on the House of Commons petitions website to see the petition that we've put together around those 4 demands. If they don't meet those 4 demands, we're looking at a very, very uncertain future, not just for something that's really important for our society, but something that's really, really important for our economy as well.
Paul Fleming from Equity, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.